Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cinema A to B, the podcast where Ben and I get to talk about movies that we want to talk about and just have fun doing it. And you get to come along for the ride. So today, we're going to talk about an oldie but a goodie, Troy Duffy's The Boondock Saints from 1999. Ben, lead us in, buddy.
All right, man. So just watched this again. It had been quite some time. I couldn't tell you how many years, and it definitely was years. So this is kind of a dual thought process here. I still enjoy it. It's still very funny, but some of its flaws, I think, are more apparent to me now than they were when I would watch this in college. And we discovered this in college in the early 2000s. So yeah, the comedy is still fantastic. The acting is all over the place. It's on the very high level is Willem Dafoe doing his thing. And on the very low level is pretty much anybody attached with the Italian or Russian mafia. That's just awful. I mean, just really bad. And then the two leads are kind of somewhere in the middle, but it's still really funny. The other thing is just from a direction standpoint, you can tell this is like an early movie. The shot selection's really good, but like the over dependence on scenes just being covered with music and like it's done a lot. That's kind of that's kind of a film school thing. Like I've done a lot of that in the past. So it has its flaws, but I still enjoyed myself. But I probably don't rate it nearly as high as I once did as a, early 20s. Like that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I definitely there's lots to unpack. I mean, I want your thought process on it's 25 years old, but like when I saw it was probably more like 02, 03.
So we watched this a couple months ago, or about a month ago, I think, and really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, but I'm right there with you. And I saw the flaws a lot more. Like it had been a while since I had seen the Boondock Saints. And of course, I remember knowing like, wow, that guy's wearing a pillow in his shirt. Like, we can have a thin Russian mob boss. Like it's okay, or like Italian, mob boss. Like it's okay. Like, come on, you don't need to do that. That's just dumb. But there's still the moments that brought me joy. Like when they, drop through the ceiling hang from the rope, which like that scene still was fun. I love the dialogue after that of like, what do you think you need a rope for? And just like those parts were fun, but it's kind of like a little bit like Kevin Smith movies that I loved them at a certain point in my life and thought these were the best things ever and have gone back and watched them. Just like, I could see why I like them. Don't like them nearly as much as I used to. I also, like you, saw this kind of like early 2000s. I also saw this kind of right in line with Equilibrium with Christian Bale, if you remember that one. And we kind of, I remember with my friends and talking, we kind of would always kind of pit them against each other because they were very similar of like stylized fighting or really cool gun action sequences and which one was better, which one wasn't. And they're very different movies. This one, I think it has a lot more, is less serious than Equilibrium, a lot more fun. I haven't watched Equilibrium in a while either, so I can't really reference that, but I kind of am right in the same long lines of like, this feels like kind of like when you read a book and you're like, this is the first book of the author. You're like, yeah, like this feels like you're still learning processes or trying out new things, or you're doing the X because you think it's cool. And you're like, it's kind of not that cool.
Yeah. And that was one of the things I was going to say is there is a little bit of a student film vibe for me in areas that it tries to be like too cool for its own good. And so the tone of the movie can be a little uneven sometimes in places, but generally it's pretty good. The movie's definitely better when they're trying to keep things a little bit lighter. There are a few instances where it like kind of takes itself a little too seriously, and the acting's just not at a level high enough for that to really work.
Yeah.
So where it's at its best is with the two of them and Rocco. Yeah. And their interaction, that is where this movie tonally is just hitting its stride. mainly because David Della Rocco is just like really naturally funny on camera, and he basically is playing himself in this movie. Like he's not really trying to act too much, and it works really well. He's pretty comfortable on screen really throughout the whole movie, and like he's one of my favorite characters easily in the whole thing. But I will say this movie like lives and dies on the shoulders of Willem Dafoe. Mm-hmm. The only thing I do not like with him in the whole movie, and somebody's gonna be like, oh, all of his like really inappropriate like gay jokes. No, that stuff's hysterical, super politically incorrect. No, it's when he's doing the run through of the firefight between the Saints and their father. It just jumps the shark for me, where he's like, there was a firefight, you know, and he's, I'm like, you played your hand. Like it's too much. When he was standing around with them, verbalizing what occurred, and he's like standing right next to them, that was a cool touch. Like he shows up in the van, and he's next to him when they have that woman like tied up, getting her to like hit a door code or something. Yeah, that worked. But then Duffy like overplayed it for when the firefight was actually happening. I was just,
because he definitely went from being kind of calm, cool, and collective and just talking to all of a sudden he's just super sweaty, his coat's off, and then he shoots randomly in the air, and I'm like, what is going on? The professional is, I could definitely see that. But no, Willem Dafoe is absolutely amazing in this. I mean, he's absolutely amazing in just pretty much everything he does. But oh my goodness.
But I love it. He gets the best dialogue because he's like, symbology. I think it was symbolism. Symbolism is what you were looking for there. Oh, and then there's another police officer. They're in the station with the Saints when they first turn themselves in, and they're not cuffed anymore. They're gonna, beat the rap. And the guys, they're like, can we crash here? And the guy's like, the other cop's like, yeah. And then he looks at Dafoe like, is that okay? And he's like, you can ask your mom, but it's okay with me if your friends sleep over. The dialogue it's a really good script. Like I think I want to make that clear. Like my questions kind of surround some of I think you just have a very green director, mm-hmm. But the script I think is really, really pretty cool. The only thing he like touches on a few times and then he kind of abandons later is some of like the Catholic icon stuff. Mm-hmm. And then like when they have that almost like a vision
that where fever dream. Yeah.
Yeah. He only does it like once, and then it's like sort of ignored for the rest of the film. And watching it again, I was like, I think there was something there worth exploring like in the third act, and they never really do it.
And I noticed too, and this time they were like at the beginning, and I kind of glossed over when I used to watch it, but like when they go to mass, and then they just kind of as the priest is talking, they just kind of walk past him, like touch the toes or whatever, and one of them's like trying to get up. They're like, oh no, let them go. Like I'm like, at that point they're nobodies. Like they haven't done anything. Like why are, like, I can understand like at the end of the movie when they've gotten rid of all these like drug dealers and mobsters, but like I don't understand.
They seem to have some sort of reputation, but I don't know exactly what that was.
They're just butchers. They were just butchers, Oh, I know. Like that's kind of what it's, again, it's these kind of these decisions where it's like, that doesn't fit, or like, what's the background? Because like, and I don't know. So I do have to say, I really like Billy Connolly in his role as El Duce.
Really bold casting that works for some, like, I mean, this Scottish comedian, and like suddenly he's like pretty much a hard man. Like I thought it worked. So
I was reading something that basically said that during like the fight sequence where he has all the guns or whatever, that he was so happy to take on this role, and he was able to kind of be the guys with all the guns as opposed to just some comedian or whatever. They actually had to put a cigar in his mouth to keep him from smiling during that scene. He couldn't stop smiling because he just kept pulling these guns out and shooting people. He was just having so much fun. But it like, this is like, that brings me joy that he was just having such a great time doing his work and playing off character. So
yeah, I definitely want to get to the comedy because I think at its core, that's really where this film like works. Is there are more laughs in it than maybe I even remember.
Yeah,
I mean, the bartender with Tourette's is hysterical,
absolutely hysterical,
and you have a lot of nice recurring comedic themes, like Dafoe just constantly
ribbing those cops,
destroying Greenlee, until Greenlee actually starts to like get so exhausted by it that he actually starts to like. He's like, well, what if it's just one guy with 6 guns? Like, Greenlee, go get me a bagel, you know. There's a couple of recurring like thematic jokes. And yeah, you mentioned the rope. I love the like the whole trope when they're in the armory and Sean Patrick Flanery's character is like, we've got to have rope. And Reedus is like, you're ridiculous. Like, what are you going to use this for? And then it actually pays off like by happenstance. Yeah, it's
and I also enjoy the fact that the whole thing worked out because their brothers were fighting. It was like a little sibling anger, and all of a sudden it just worked out, you know?
Yeah, when the movie's self-aware, it works really well. And Dafoe even does that when he's examining that crime scene. He's like, you see this in bad television.
Professionals don't do this.
No, nobody professional does this. Yeah.
Oh. Or when they do, I love when Rocco walks in and they scare him into the hotel or whatever. And he goes, this gun has 6 bullets. There's 8 bodies here. What were you going to do? Laugh the other ones to death?
Yeah. Oh, and I'd forgotten all about the scene in the...
With the cat?
Well, I forgot about the cat, which reminded me so much of when Travolta and Samuel L. accidentally shoot the guy in the back in the head. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about the cat, but I forgot about the whole scene with Ron Jeremy in the club, and then the dancer passes out and Rocco and they're like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'll tip her." It's so wrong.
It's terrible.
The movie's so wrong on so many levels. And yeah, Defoe smacking his lover in the back of the head because he wants to cuddle and like, yeah, it is not aged well from a stance of political correctness, but obviously neither of us care about that. Yeah. Comedy's comedy.
Yeah, I will say it's shot okay. Like there's some scenes where I kind of think about like, oh, you're trying to do this to be fancy. And then others, I mean, kind of going back to it feels like you're fresh out of, film school, your first kind of movie.
You can tell a lot of the stuff of them walking around Boston feels sort of like guerrilla filmmaking. Mm-hmm.
Probably didn't get permits.
I don't think they did.
Yeah.
I was watching it and when I was watching it the other day, I noticed that. I was like, man, a lot of this is handheld. They're walking all over the city. It's good material. So it helps the edit a lot, but it's like, yeah, that feels like they didn't get permits for any of that and just decided to, and that kind of works against it because the other setups are usually pretty polished as far as the camera movement. So that stuff intermixed feels a little bit, but I mean, you're talking about this movie was made for $6 million. Yeah. Didn't do well at the box office, but reportedly has made somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million on home video.
Yeah.
And I know I bought the DVD and all my friends in college owned the DVD. So like it made its money.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately that's a revenue stream that's pretty much no longer viable.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you won't have these kind of movies that make big bucks.
But supposedly the studios, they kept it hidden, but supposedly the studios have never wanted physical media in the hands of a home audience. No. Like even from the very inception of Betamax and VHS, they didn't want us to have physical copies that we could watch whenever we wanted. Yep. But I think the jury's still out whether they're going to actually get the money they need perpetually via streaming, especially with the fact that they've brought the advertising revenue back in with commercials on all these platforms. It's like, meh. So,
well, I still buy DVDs and Blu-rays So I recommend our listeners to do the same on the stuff that you want.
Yeah, we're big
physical media.
You know, yeah, and be picky like we are with, or at least I am, with what you're cool with still owning on DVD, because it maybe isn't like this mega blockbuster that you feel like you need it in the highest quality format. Be picky with what you feel like, I want that in Blu-ray or Blu-ray ultra high definition, which I've not made the jump yet for 4K discs.
Yeah. I've bought several 4K discs just because there were movies I knew that at some point I'll make the jump to a projector and a larger screen than the 65-inch that I have now. And I want them. And I also do read a lot of the reviews. Like there's a couple good websites that actually review the discs and say, like, give it ratings on whether or not the transfer was done really well, the audio, how that was done. So if they're giving it 5 stars and this is a fantastic transfer, then I usually will. And it's something I want to watch again and again. I'll probably get the 4K just so I can future-proof myself. Yeah, and I still just have this on a DVD. Same.
It's not a high res, and it didn't matter because the image is kind of grainier anyway. I mean, it's late 90s, shot on 35 millimeter film. Like it's not got a strong color grade on it, but it doesn't need it. I actually like getting back to that where they just let the film stocks kind of dictate how the movie's going to look and take care of the rest with the production design. And they make good use of locations with this. I love Boston as a setting, and it does some cool stuff. I mean, that whole method of you seeing the aftermath of these crime scenes before you actually see what went down is kind of fun, especially that first one where Dafoe puts his Discman on. I mean, I was like, I forgot that I was, this is how old this movie is. He puts his headphones on, and of course they're wired.
Yep.
But I don't think anything of that. I'm like, oh, well, wired headphones are still a thing. Okay. I'm expecting like an iPod or something or some sort of early gen MP3 player. No, it's a straight up Discman on there. And I'm like, that is awesome. And later in the movie, he's like running fingerprints, on a 90s laptop that's about 6 inches thick. And I'm like, that is amazing. I love seeing that old tech that's all been relegated to the garbage bin in a movie from the late 90s is just super fun. It's like when you go back and watch the first Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise, the laptops, they're Apple like power books, but they're like 6-8 inches thick with 10-inch screens and running custom software that doesn't actually exist.
No.
Like it's all.
So we got to talk a little bit about Troy Duffy, the director.
Yeah.
He's got some issues. And he's difficult to work with, apparently. I think after this movie's success, I think he got a really big head and it got him into a lot of trouble. And he's essentially been blackballed. I mean, I think supposedly Boondock Saints 3 is in pre-production. It's been stuck in pre-production for probably 5 years. Yeah. I think everybody's on board to reprise it, to do it. But I think it's a funding question because All Saints Day did not do well, and it wasn't that good. It wasn't, and I that goes back to no Willem Dafoe, and I think that's the missing ingredient. I don't think you should do a Boondock Saints film without that character. Well, and the tone changed too. It became a lot more serious and less comedic. It did. It was it was very self-serious. I just don't think the script was particularly good. I did go see it. I don't remember if we went to a theater and watched it. I feel like I did because it was 2009. Yeah, and that was the first one was I still held in very high esteem in 2009. I don't think so. I think we went. I think we went to the. Yeah. I think we did go to the theater and see it, and it was that. It had its moments, but at the end of the day, it was like you can't recreate the fight. Recreate the greatness. No. Yeah. I mean, I agree that he probably was blackballed, but he was also, everything that I read about it was that he was super difficult to work with. Like you said, kind of full of yourself, had some problems in clubs or bars or whatever too. Also took a lot of grief because he hated people comparing him to Quentin Tarantino and Guy Ritchie. And so even though he considers like Tarantino one of his like, not like heroes basically or whatever.
Yeah, like
inspiration, but he hated people comparing. He's like, this movie's different. And it's just like, you can't, like, these are two fantastic directors. You can't throw them in the bus or put yourself on top of them because
if you're being compared to them, it's like a total compliment. Yeah. I mean, and this movie does have like a little bit of Guy Ritchie vibes in some places. Like I said, there is a dependency on music running in some scenes and they go a little longer than maybe they should, but the music choice is usually really, really good. Like, so most of the time it works.
I remember they didn't have the soundtrack for this. And there's the scene where Rocco goes into like the little sandwich shop and, walks out and then goes back in. Because he wants to kill the guys making fun of him. And there's that track that plays. And I scoured the internet to find what that track was because I absolutely love that.
He goes absolutely ballistic.
Yeah, he does.
On everybody in there. Yeah. The Saints themselves don't really have very good arcs, which I think is a legitimate problem. Most of the other characters though do. And one of my favorite arcs is Dafoe's FBI guy, because he's so buttoned up at the beginning and like sure of himself, and he's this high level, homicide detective, has all the ballistics experts at his disposal. I love it when he starts to lose it. He's just like, the scene comes to a head when he's at the big shootout crime scene, and the gal's like, we can't pull any of this blood. It's not like. And he starts to smell it, and he's like, he sticks his finger up. They used ammonia, none of this is usable. And he just loses his mind. And then he finds Rocco's finger and recomposes himself, doesn't tell anybody what he just found, wraps it up, puts it in his pocket, and just strolls off. But yeah, I kind of like watching his like brief descent into like, my methods aren't working anymore. It's pretty fun.
I mean, again, it's that character arc where he's then okay with the vigilantism and kind of being able to step aside of use his position to get them into places, but then just allow them to exact justice.
Yeah. And that's what we thought we were getting in a part 2.
Yeah.
Was more of that crew running like together. And that's not what we got. They all like were hiding out in Ireland, and then the priest gets killed, and then they come back. I don't know. And maybe they couldn't get Dafoe. Maybe he didn't want to reprise the role. I'm sure in certain circles it's a pretty controversial role.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
My goodness. So absolutely fun, heavily flawed, but fun.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's still better than a lot of movies. It's a 7.6 on IMDb. Like it's not frowned upon film at all. But yeah, it's started to show it's not even its age. It's just, I guess I've seen more film.
And a different place in your life too, where you appreciate other things more than certain stuff. And also going back, it's probably not as... It's
not as smart as it was when I watched it 20 years ago.
We've seen more stuff.
Like it's just not like it. I don't know. I didn't consider it the greatest thing ever. It didn't show up in any top 10 list, but I think I thought of it as a smarter film than it actually is.
Or like the action sequences were a whole lot better than what they actually are.
Yeah. The gunplay I thought probably was better 20 years ago than I do now.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Yeah. But that's just aging, seeing more stuff.
But I think I probably feel like it's funnier now.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I pick up more on the nuance of some of the comedic performance from them than maybe I did then. So in some ways it's better, in some ways it's not, but it's still, I don't know, it's still a good way to spend a couple hours, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah. It's just crazy to me that came out the same year as The Matrix, Yep.
Technically, it came into the U.S. in 2000, so like the 99 release date's a little deceiving. Like it released some places in Europe in 99.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it wasn't until like January or February, I think, of 2000 is when it actually had its real small limited theatrical run. And like I said, I didn't find it until college. And I believe a friend of mine in college I played basketball with was the one that discovered it.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was the one that like bought a copy and was like, you guys have got to watch this. And 5 or 6 of us gathered around a TV that by all accounts today we would consider completely like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like in a dorm room, like, I don't even know.
24 inch.
I mean, I had
CRT.
I think I had like a 13 inch color TV in college in my dorm room, which I thought was amazing. And now I would just be like, how can you even watch a movie on that? Especially this like letterbox.
Yeah.
You can imagine like, cause I think he had a letterbox copy of the movie. I don't think it was full frame.
No.
Well, yeah, because it was DVD. Yeah, it wasn't full frame.
Well, no, remember they were doing with DVDs. They were doing both full frame and letterbox versions.
Yeah.
So
I was always a letterbox. I hated pan and scan.
So I was full screen. Like in high school, I was full screen until I watched a specific movie that we have not talked about yet.
Oh, okay.
And that I got to see on Letterboxd, and it blew me away and changed my entire. That I was like, oh.
Well, see, I saved up a bunch of money back in the late 90s for Letterboxd, and I still have them because the slipcase is really cool. But Letterboxd copies, VHS copies of the Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And they were in a black and silver slip cover, and where the full frames were in gold and black. And I paid way too much money on like eBay for these things, and I've still got them. But
yeah,
that's how partial I was to like I want the way these were originally, even though you lose half your television space at the time. But yeah. We're old if we're talking about this. My goodness.
Well, it's fun because within the move, I was able to kind of pull out I still have my 27-inch JVC CRT television that I bought when I was in college, like my sophomore year or whatever. And it's still there.
CRTs were amazing, man.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they're heavy. That thing is heavy as mess.
I left a 17-inch CRT at our apartment in Virginia Beach that I think just ended up in a trash bin somewhere, or maybe Suzanne, my sister, took it. Or
well, yeah. So in that apartment, the TV that we had in the living room, that was my JVC. That's still alive, buddy. That thing's
is it a Trinitron?
No,
or Sony was Trinitron.
Yeah, it's just the JVC. I don't remember exactly what.
No, CRT was like the best you could get in the like late 90s.
Yeah.
You know, they were color grading stuff on those CRTs up into the early 2000s in Hollywood. Like they had like 19 or 20 inch widescreen, standard definition CRT. That was as good as you could get.
Anything else that we want to
with Boondock
or tangent off of?
No. This has been a fun one to kind of come back to.
Yeah.
It had been
too long.
I'm wondering if it'd been 5 or 10 years since I'd watched this thing all the way through.
Oh, it's definitely been 10.
I mean, you see clips, right? I pull up clips for movies all the time on YouTube, but to actually sit down and watch something that I hadn't seen in a while, it was a fun watch.
It was good. Well,
good stuff.
We just want to say thank you to everybody for giving us a listen this week. We really appreciate it. We're going to obviously come out with a new episode next Monday. And if you want something for us to review or talk about, feel free to drop us a line on our YouTube channel on this episode, or send us an email at cinemaaToB@gmail.com. We'd be happy to take it and read it and possibly talk about the movie that you're recommending. So, but if not, we'll see you next week with a new episode.